Hi everyone, it's Jan, and I know it has been a while since you have seen a new tutorial from me, and it's time for me to get back into the swing of that. I've been a little focused for the last few months working on getting my book written and published. The book is called Illuminated Journaling, and it's now in print and out there, and so I can change my focus from writing to coming back and sharing fun tutorials with you all as well. So I'm probably going to be a little rusty, so I will ask for your patience with me as I get back into the swing of this. But I thought I would start with one that is just super fun. It is a technique that I've gotten a lot of requests for. I've posted them on Instagram. And if you don't follow me, I would love for you to come follow me over on Instagram or on Facebook. Sometimes when I'm focused on a writing project, I'm still able to put some projects together on and post them on Instagram. So I'd love for you to follow me there. But this particular technique is just super fun, and I've actually used it on cards as well. I'm showing you two different pages in a couple of Bibles that I have done with it. And I'm going to do another page in my Bible as well today, but I'm going to show you the basic technique, but show you that you can also do it with stamps if you did not necessarily want to do the hand lettering as well. So let me clear these things away, and I'll come back and I'll show you what tools and supplies we're going to need to create this really fun textured background. Before I show you the tools and supplies, I wanted to give you a closer look at this background here. And you can see that it has kind of a rustic look to it, and that really was what inspired me. I saw on Pinterest, I think it was, somebody that had done some hand-carved stamps, and they all had a little bit, when you hand carve a stamp, you sometimes don't get all of the rubber carved down, and so there's these little random pieces of that rubber that still ink up and get onto your paper, and it's got a very distinctive hand-carved look to it, and I loved that look, and I didn't really have the time to, or maybe even the motivation for when I was doing something that's kind of a one-off kind of thing, like this particular phrase. I wanted to do steadfast love. But I wanted to kind of create that look, and that's where that started. And I did the hand lettering like I would have if I were going to carve the stamp. And I'm going to show you how I do all of this. But then I started adding kind of the random marks, and I felt like because they weren't really organic, because they weren't coming from an actual stamp, it wasn't appealing to me. So I went back and I decided to do these hash marks, and I really ended up loving that. So that's where the idea came from, but that is what really inspired me to want to use the stamp set from Tim Holtz, because these stamps have that hand carved. You see those little, sorry for the glare, I apologize. Let's see if I put it this way. You see how there's these little random marks around them? Great example of those little marks. So I thought it'd be fun to use those stamps. And so now let me clear everything away and show you how we're going to do a combination of wording and stamping to create this really fun page. We're going to be working with really simple tools and supplies. I am going to use this stamp. I've chosen the trumpet because it is going to go along with the verse that I am going to be working with. I always start with a mechanical pencil, and if you have not taken any of my illuminated journaling workshops, you may not know that I've kind of come to be a little bit obsessed with mechanical pencils. As I have been teaching myself to draw and using line art in my Bible, I found that having the thinnest line possible is really kind of critical, and I don't have the patience to keep a regular pencil sharpened like the mechanical pencil does. So I've become a little obsessed with them and highly recommend them. I also recommend using either a white eraser or a kneaded eraser when you're going to be working in your Bible because you want to be able to erase any of that pencil line off. Because I will be stamping, I'm using archival ink. I will be using some watercolor medium over it, and so I want it to be permanent. Also, archival does not bleed through my page. I'm not going to be prepping my page, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there, but I use archival ink, and I keep this ink pad that's not very juicy for that very purpose. And it's okay if it doesn't give me a perfect impression. I can go back in and color over it with some micron markers. So I'm not prepping my page, but I am using archival ink so that it won't bleed through and so that it will be permanent and color fast. I am going to be using some micron pens. These are by Sakura. Really like these, and I've pulled out 3 different sizes. Actually, I need to pull out a 4th one. I don't know how I missed that one. There we go. I don't know. These 2 I know I'm going to use. I'm going to use a number 1 and a .005 nib size. The 1 is the thick one, and I'm going to use it for outlining, and the 005 helps me make some kind of extra marks around the letters. And then either the 02 or the 03 is what I'm going to use to make the hash marks in the background. I recommend using a clear ruler. I love this one. I usually use my Tim Holtz, but I found that I like working with this shorter ruler in my Bible because it's more the size that I need. It's proportioned to the page that I'm working on. And I'm going to use some inktense bars, or blocks, I think these are called. And if you have inktense pencils, they work exactly the same. You could use watercolor pencils for this particular project as well. I will tell you that the reason I like using inktense is because they go on like watercolor. You can use them like watercolor. They have very vibrant pigmentation, which is great, and they are very color true. So when you dry it, they dry in very similar to the color that you see when they're wet. But the interesting thing about them is once they are dry, they are not reactivated with water. When I'm working in my Bible, that actually is a great advantage, because what that allows me to do is to put down a true color and then maybe put a light color wash over it and not reactivate it. So if I really like the color placement on something, I'm not going to reactivate it and have it bleed over into it. Watercolor, sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. For this particular project, I really am wanting to have this color be very permanent right around the letters. I'll show you how we're going to use that. And then I can add some additional colors with my colored pencils or additional washes. So again, simple supplies that we're going to be working with. Let's get right to it. The passage of scripture that I'm going to be working from today is found in Numbers chapter 10, and I am working in my ESV Bible. I have the double column. You saw the other Bible that I am using. That is the new Broadman-Holman journaling Bible. I really like it too. It's a little bit larger. But this is my personal reflection Bible, and it's beginning to get a little full, so I have started in my Broadman-Holman one as well, so that I can have a place to do whatever I feel the Lord leading me to do. Okay, all that being said, we're back to chapter 10 in Numbers. And just to give you some context, this particular passage, or the portion of the scripture, is focused around the people of Israel after they have left Egypt. Moses is leading them out, and they're wandering in the wilderness, and they're coming across people that they have to go to battle with. They try to live at peace, but people were not necessarily letting them be at peace. They are not yet in the land of Israel yet that God had planned for them. They are wandering in the desert. And he has had Moses had the artisans create trumpets, and he's telling them here are the various uses for them. And so let me just read the passage to you. There have been many things that the Lord has said you can use the trumpets for, but here's the one that I really I kind of honed in on as something that I wanted to ponder a little bit more. And it starts in verse 9. It says, "And when you go to war in your land against the adversary who oppresses you, then you shall sound an alarm with the trumpets, that you may be remembered before the Lord your God, and you shall be saved from your enemies." And I started thinking about that, and I've been pondering it for a while. And if you have, if you've attended one of my classes or have read my book, you know that I talk about the fact that one of the things I love best about Bible journaling or illuminated journaling is that it allows me to tarry in the Word. And for me, that is I kind of rest in it, and I wait, and I let the reflection time come, and then I come back and I try and respond back to it. And that's what I want to do today, because as I've been reflecting on that, I feel like we're just in a really critical time in our country, and if we just keep going down the path that we're going, we're not going to be the great country that we have been. And I think about ISIS and just how it almost has gotten so, we're the edge of it has gone away. It's when we first saw what they were doing, we were horrified, and then it became, well, that's we're at war with them or whatever. But I just my heart is stirred up when I hear what they're doing to women and children. And I want us as a country to rise up and say no more, no more. And the only way we can fight that kind of evil and enmity is by sounding the alarm and saying no more. So that's kind of what it is, and that's not me trying to be political or anything else. I'm just sharing my heart with you that this passage about sounding the alarm when you are at war with your enemies, I just want to sound the alarm for myself. I want this. You know what? It isn't business as usual. It's sound the alarm and get busy kind of stuff. So anyway, enough meandering thoughts on my part. Let me tell you what my plan is here. I'm going to stamp the trumpet in here, and I'm wanting to put I'm going to put sound the alarm, but one of the things that I like when I'm doing this particular kind of style is I like highlighting the verse just by giving myself a little box around it with which I can erase later, but I want to save it. I want it to be, I don't want to cover that up. I want to be able to look at that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that. So let's do that first. And I'm not putting a ton of ink on here. I'm going to turn it over so you can see. I'm not trying to get just a black impression, although if we get one, that'll be great. And I'm actually going to let it sit here for just a second because I'm going to put something in between. There, oh, much better. Okay. So I'm just going to tap it one more time just to get a little more. I'm out of practice, aren't I? Okay, so I'm going to put this up here. Trying to decide where I want it. Give it a good press. There we go. Oh, isn't that fun? I'm telling you, I love that hand-carved stamp looking thing. And I think I'm just going to leave that paper there while I'm doing this. So I want down here, I want to put sound the alarm. And I'm going to put a little bit of journaling over here. So I'm going to go with, and I found that doing block letters is okay. Tell you what, let me bring you in a little closer on this. Can you see that better now? Okay. I like making these overlap a little bit. So, doing that. But sometimes I like I don't want each one to just go behind. So this one I'm going to, on the U here, I'm going to bring it in front. Go in and erase. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with my nib size 1 pen, and I'm going to just make these lines permanent. And I sometimes will perfect my marks a little bit if I feel like it needs just a little bit of an adjustment. I'll do that now. But I think for this particular look you need a thicker pen to, you can see how the edges are pretty thick on the stamp, and I think that we're just using it as our inspiration. We don't have to recreate it totally and completely. So I'm just loosely going around my lettering here, but because I'm using such a very thin nib, I mean, it's minuscule. You almost probably can't even see it, but it gives kind of, and it's okay if the lines are wavy. In fact, that actually helps. I only want it to, I'm kind of going right around next to that edge, but I make sure that some of the line is outside of the thicker edge. Does that make sense? Can you see how in here there's just a little bit, and it's, you know, it's a little detail, but I sometimes think it's those little details that can make something a little more extraordinary. Okay, while we're in close, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. And what I will probably do is begin to fill this in and show you how I fill in different areas instead of making you watch from start to finish. But I want to show you what I do. Okay, so I'm going to start over in here, and I use my ruler, and I go from something that already exists, and I flick out, and I'm going to do 4 or 5 lines. Okay, so 1, and I just move it over a little, and I'm not being precise. What I am doing here is, you're not going to see any of this because just by itself, because you're going to see it in context. But I'm going to come in a little tighter here so that you can see these, kind of this building process. So we're down in here, and then what I do is I just come and make 3 to 4 or 5 marks that meet it, and you can see why I'm now liking working with my smaller ruler, and where the line ends. And personally, I'm going to pull this out a little bit. Personally, I like moving the leading edge away from where I'm working. I think when I try to do it the other way, and by that I mean this, and I'm try to come up, you can see that I can't really see how far away from the last line I really am. Okay? So do you see what I'm doing there? I'm going to come in here. I'm going to connect these. You see, there's no right or wrong here, folks. We're just making these little crosshatch patterns. We're filling it in. I'm just always trying to make them work against each other. Do you see what I'm meaning by that? I'm trying to envision them tucking in back and forth between here. And so I'm going to I like working an area, I will tell you, this is like wonderful to work on while you're watching or listening to something, because it's good. It's kind of mindless, so you don't have to have 100% attention. You see, I'll do better going this way. And I like creating little nooks and crannies that you have to fill. So see, like I've got all this fun to fill in here, so I'm just gonna come against the grain here. Sometimes I go at an angle, sometimes I give it a 90-degree edge. See how I'm beginning to fill in these tight spots. Okay, can you see how I work this edge here? I want to come out a little bit and then just let them stop at the edge. That's me. That's what I like, but you do what you like. One thing I want to show you before we go up to work around the trumpet is I want to show you how I deal with these kind of captured spaces and how I work around this verse. So I'm going to do the verse part first. You notice, remember that I have a little pencil outline because my pencil will erase, but I'm going to use that as if there was a solid line there like I do connecting anywhere else. And I'm going to start there and then do my marks out from it. But I'm using the pencil line as if it's that starting place. So when I get this all the way around it, then it will actually kind of be boxed in. Let's go down into one of these captured spaces, and I tend to think of it as if these letters have just been laid down on top of this background, and we're going to make them pop out a little bit more. But so what I try and do is make the internal things that I do inside this captured space look like they actually are continuing on, as opposed to making everything smaller because of this captured space. So that allows me to imagine the space being actually maybe even bigger. And it keeps me from being too detailed inside that captured space. I think sometimes it's fun to just give it some long strokes. Okay, so that's how I deal with captured space. Sorry, I'm jarring the table. Okay, so I finished the background cross-hatching. This is where we kind of go and make it pop. And I'm going to use my inktense bars in kind of these purpley, purpley down to blue. I don't even know what you would call these, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to swatch a couple of them over here so I can see what colors I'm getting. Let's see if I can bring this down where you can see it too. This color right here is this bar. This one is this one. And I think the next one is going to take me way into, that's going to be more blue. So I like that trio. Could potentially kind of go out to that, but I think the color that I want right next to the edge is this deep color. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to rinse this off and set it aside, because for this detail, now that I've swatched, I'll move that out where you can see a little bit more, because we're just going to be focusing on this one bar color right here. And these bars you can pick up and you can draw with them if you like. They are just basically the same material that's inside the inktense pencils. I just don't love the look of that I get when I put watercolor pencil, whether it's inktense or even the watercolor pencil, on my Bible page and then bring the water to it. I find that it tends to make a permanent mark that I can't blend out totally. It's probably my, it's that I am not working with it like I should, but I have just come to the conclusion that I would rather pick up the color and bring it to the page. And I am going for fairly intense color right by the letters. That darkness right at the edge there will help them pop a little bit. So I realize that it's dark, but I'm okay with that. I'm going to blend out to some of these other colors here in a bit, but for right now I want the dark right by that. So I'm outlining it. Now remember, one of the properties of inktense pencils or inktense bars is that they act like watercolors when they are first wet, but once they dry, they don't reactivate with water. They become permanent. So this dark line that I'm putting, if you don't want the solidness of the line, you would want to go ahead and blend it out right now. I want it darkest right at the edge, so I don't have a problem with this line becoming permanent, but I want to point out that that is one of those things you have to either really want, or you have to be mindful of and plan what you're going to do with it. I could go ahead and blend it out right now, and then I wouldn't be dealing with that line, but I'm okay with that. It's actually what I want as I'm outlining these colors these letters right now. Okay, we have the outline done, and I want you to see now that it's dry, it hasn't soaked through. So that's why it's okay with me on the Bible that I use. I have found that it's okay for me to use watercolor directly on the page. But I tested it in the back of my Bible, and I just want to encourage you to do that as well. Okay, I'm going to now switch over to the a little bit larger brush, and I'm going to fill in some of these areas, and I'm going to do kind of a wash of the same color that I'm using, only it's going to be diluted because I have more water in it, and then go with that lighter purple as well. So I'm going to pick up some of the dark, but because I'm adding water to it, it's going to be a little bit lighter, and you can see I'm picking up some of this other color and working it in as well. Just kind of mixing them. If I pick up too much of the dark, or if the paint appears to be too dense, just add a little more water. Got this nice and dry now, and I want to draw attention to the trumpet, and I'm going to leave the letters without any color on them, but I'm going to do a little bit of a treatment up there. Now, as I was reading the scripture in context, it talks about these trumpets being silver, and so while my instinct would probably have been to go with gold, I'm going to do silver. Now, I'm using Prismacolor pencils, and I love them, but I really am not a fan of the silver color. There actually is a silver and a gold. I don't think it doesn't read well. So I'm going to just use some grays. I'm using cool grays, and I'm using a 20% and a 50% cool gray. That's going to be a bluish gray. I've also pulled out one that's called slate gray, and of course my white. And I'm going to just give it a little bit of color. One of the things that's true of silver, when it reflects, things that we normally would see as a highlight, actually there's a darker spot there. So I'm going to use my darker colors everywhere else, and where the highlight is, and I'm going to put my lightest colors out at the edge here, just to give it as much of a silver tint as I can. This rim is going to be a little bit lighter, but I want to put just enough gray in here that it is reading not as a shadow. I may put just a touch of this blue. these valves right here are actually cylinders, so I'm trying to make the center be the lightest point. Blending out. I just want it to read slightly different than the letters that we have down here. So that's all I'm okay. Just enough different. On some of my other pages, let's go over here too. When I did this before, so if we can find I really like when there's a pop of color, so on this one I made the O into a heart, but I just really didn't find a letter that I could do that with this time, and I think that's okay. I mean, I tend to like a particular look, and so I sometimes get carried away with recreating the look, but this has its own feel to it, so it's okay. It's not exactly, this doesn't pop as much as the other, but I'm okay with that. Okay, so one of the last things that I want to do is I really want to go back in and darken. Even though we left it really dark around the letters, I want to make it pop even more, so I'm going to go in with a violet pencil, and I'm going to take you in a little tighter here as I go around these words. And I want to reestablish that dark, the darkest of darks, right next to those letters. And this is a similar color to what I was using from the colored pencils. So it will blend in nicely. And honestly, you could just stop right there, but I actually want to blend in some of this and maybe even a little bit of this lighter. So I'm gonna come in, and I'm not, whereas I was really purposeful right around that edge so that I burnished it almost to the place that it was shiny, I'm not going to be that way as much. I am going to come back in with that darker, but again, I'm using it much more lightly. Now you can see I'm holding the pencil back here. That if you tend to have a little bit of a heavy hand when you color, this is a good way to kind of help bring that back under control a little bit. Using the edge here as well. To do before we got to that, where there is an overlap in the letters, I'm going to do just a little bit of cool gray to indicate that there's a shadow, just anywhere that there's a little overlap. Not a ton, just a little bit. Now we can go back to, always start my just gives it a little more dimension. And there we have it. Let me back out just a little bit. Have that whole page. I am going to add my scripture reference here. Let's see, Numbers chapter 10, verse 9. And I'm just going to work it into this edge down here. There we have it. I want to tell you it's good to be back. I'm hoping to have several more tutorials to share with you again soon. If you want to learn more about illuminated journaling, I hope you will visit my website at www.illuminatedjournaling.com. You can get a copy of my book there. It's also called Illuminated Journaling, and there's some other classes and workshops that you might be interested in. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Those are places that I'm able to share kind of in the moment things with you as I'm getting ready to maybe come back and do a tutorial. It's great to be back with you. Thanks for watching. I'll be back real soon, and be sure and take some time for creative play.